Funky. Go funky.
What's up, guys? I'm back again. I'm Cass with NintendoNuggets.com. Today I have John Delia from retrowaretv.com. You might have seen him in the video game years and a few other things on YouTube. You just said you're from Connecticut. How's the snow up there?
Yeah, we got more snow than we expected, but it was light snow. It wasn't too bad. It made for a nice, relaxing, leisurely weekend with my family.
That's always fun.
Yeah.
That's always fun.
Hung out, watched movies. That's basically how it worked. And football.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's been a little cold here. I think it's going to be 70 in a couple days down here, so.
Oh yeah, rub it in. Yeah, we had a warm winter so far, and then we just got hit, but
yeah.
It's all right. Not too bad.
Yeah, I saw somebody say like they decided to just put winter all in one weekend.
Yeah, that's definitely right. So I can't complain. It's been fine.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, like I said, RetroWare TV. How did that all start? I don't even know. Are you the founder of that? How did the whole RetroWare TV thing come about? And you and RetroWare TV?
Yeah, it's I, along with Lance Cortez, a buddy of mine from here in Connecticut. He lives a couple towns over. We've been friends for over 10 years, and we both started the website. We started it as we started on YouTube basically just as a show, and this was about 2007, so about 9 years now. It was Lance's idea. He came up. We were both working at the time at the History Channel, A&E.
Nice.
They have their production facilities in Stamford, Connecticut, and we had both had an education background in film production and television production. We both found ourselves working for a cable network, but we weren't really doing. We were doing more administrative, behind-the-scenes sort of technical broadcast kind of work, and we were itching to do some production again because that's what we always loved to do. And we had become friends working in the same department, and a lot of it was, he's a cool guy, and also we discovered that we both had a fondness for collecting video games and, holding on to all of the old stuff that we had since we were kids, and then building upon that and having a game room and showing our collections. And he came up to me, and we had both sent links to each other over the last couple those previous years of angry video game nerd at the time, angry Nintendo nerd, and we loved him. It was great to see a guy go bullshit over over bad Nintendo games, and it was just hilarious to see. And YouTube was still really new, and we said, well, there weren't a lot of videos like this on YouTube at the time. There were, a few here and there of classic video game stuff. And he said, well, would you like to do a one-off, do a review of a game and take it a little more seriously? Not because we thought it was bad what James was doing, but because we just wanted to take it a different direction. So if we made it like a television show with segments, and we'll just do one episode, see how it goes. So he came up with that idea in 07, or it might have been 06 actually, and then we didn't really start it until 07 because I was probably just messing around and not getting up to it. We decided that we would look at, we'd start the show with looking at lesser known games. So I know that I believe he started with Double Dragon on the either the Game Boy Advance or the Sega Master System, and the game that I always wanted to do a review of, or that I would like to essentially write an essay about, was Snatcher. So the first Snatcher on the Sega CD by Konami. So
Okay.
We went ahead and started writing our own segments, and then we shot the basically the quote-unquote studio segments where the two of us would introduce what we were going to do, what we were going to talk about, and then go from there. It was cool. I mean, it was something that it allowed us to practice our editing chops that we hadn't been doing in a while, and setting up shoots, and it was fun. I mean, we took it very seriously in the beginning. It's funny because of how bad our early stuff looks compared to what you can obviously do today. But, we set it all up with the lights. We set it up with mics. We recorded sound separately. We did all this crazy stuff that is completely useless to do in a kind of show like that now. But and then that's essentially how it started.
Wow, that is awesome. I discovered you in the video game years.
Oh, yeah.
And I binge watched that just recently. and that's how I discovered you. And for people who don't know, Video Game Years kind of does a look from 1977 to 1989. Arcade games, home consoles, they go over a lot of it, and it's really fun. Very well done. The quality, the graphics. I mean, it looked like it could be on TV. I'm not just saying that because you're here. I mean, it was very well done compared to other things on YouTube. Just in general, you know, like I said, it looked like it could be on TV. I thought it looked a lot like VH1's I Love the 70s. I love the 80s. I loved that show too. I love history in general, and I love video games, and I like pop culture history, so I watched all those VH1 shows.
Sure, yeah, I did too, and that's definitely that was definitely the influence.
Okay, cool. Oh yeah, I was going to ask you that. That was the first thing I thought about. Like, I was like, it looks like they used the concept of I Love That, and I loved that y'all did that. It was really cool. How did the Video Game Years come about? I saw, you know, you had a lot of support from a lot of people. Those are just all your buddies that are on there, or how did who came up with the idea?
It was I came up with the idea myself in it was probably like 2010, and it was just an idea I had, and I shared it with Lance at the time. And at that time, we were still doing our episodes. We were building the website. We were getting more people to be a part of the quote-unquote Retroware TV family and post their videos on our site, throw our bumper up, and basically just kind of build a community on the site. And I had the idea a while before it started, and it just was we didn't have enough people that we could have in our network or have as friends or acquaintances that we could, you know, get to do this. And
you have to kind of be funny. Well, not funny, but, you know, a little.
Well, yeah, that was the trick.
Yeah.
The original idea was that, yeah, it would be exactly like I Love the 80s, I Love the 70s, because the idea of taking a large piece of history or a large topic and then distilling it down to bite-sized, humorous moments, we wanted it to be more funny. In the beginning. So if you look back at our old episodes, it was 1977. It's a little rough around the edges. I actually edited that entire thing, and we mapped out all the main topics, not just the format of the show, which was, honestly, I went back to an I Love the 80s episode. I think it was like I Love 1983, and I dissected exactly the format production of it. You know, everything from the intro to the narration to the bumper segments that lead into the next topic, and then I dissected it based on how many main pieces or how many main topics are they hitting per segment, and then start to map out exactly what topics we're going to talk to. So originally I did all the history, I did all the topics, and then I laid it out basically like an outline map. And then come 2012, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but we shared it with all the contributors that said they were on board to filming their segments in front of a green screen, and said, here, talk about these topics, send me the footage, and then I'll put it together. And that was essentially our pilot episode. Like I was saying before, even though the idea came up a couple years before we started it, we started building Retroware, started getting a little bit bigger around 2011, 2012, and we had Pat the NES Punk on there. The Game Chasers had just started. We still had Norm the Gaming Historian, a bunch of guys.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah, and he was an early guy on Retroware, and we had a whole bunch of people that were now part of our group, and we'd all become buddies. We would go to conventions together. We would do panels together. We would talk online. We would mess around, have fun. So we all became more close, and Pat, along with Joey Rue DeSena, from 16-Bit Gems, they, along with Lance and I, had become basically like the management group behind Retroware. We had decided that we were going to drive the strategy of what we were going to do. And I had floated the idea past Pat, saying, hey, man, I had this idea a while back. It would be very collaborative. It would be very, very focused on the site as like a community of people who make stuff. And what do you think? And he thought it was a great idea. And he had a lot of influence and a lot of contacts along, not just on Retroware, but past that. And we had a few other contacts as well. So we said, well, let's go for it. Let's start a production of at least the first episode and see where we go. And we premiered it I believe in 2011, no, 2012, the beginning of 2012 at MagFest down in Maryland or Virginia. It was actually Maryland. It used to be Virginia, now it's Maryland. And no one had seen it. No one on the site, anything. I was, feverishly editing it up until the day that we showed it at our panel. And everyone loved it. They thought it was, everyone on the site thought, oh, this is completely different. I see where you're going. I see what you can do here. And that's when we kept moving forward, kept pushing for the rest of the 1970s episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, man, it looked like do you ever remember G4, the channel, the video game channel?
Yeah.
First thing I thought about was this could be on TV. I don't know what it wouldn't really go. I don't think anybody would have a video game thing now, but if they had G4, I was like, he could have got this on G4 TV. This is amazing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we Lance and I always loved Icons.
Yeah.
The 30-minute show, the sort of serious docu-series look. And yeah, we loved G4 Tech TV before it became, well, essentially nothing now, but before it became a little more pop culture versus strictly games.
There's so many people on YouTube now who have referenced that show on G4 Icons. I know. Yep. I just started doing my own little YouTube thing, GamingDocs, where I pretty much, inspired by Gaming Historian, but
that's cool.
I do a little editing. I went to school for it, so I was like, yeah, let me do it. I want to do some of the, because I couldn't find anybody doing things for that I wanted, Mario. I just wanted a good Mario one, so that's the first thing I did, like the history of Mario. I couldn't find anybody who did that, so I was like, I'm gonna do it. And Icons, that's where I got it from, and Gaming Historian kind of inspired me. And I think he said before too that he was inspired by that. And that was
a lot of us. Show. Icons predates Retroware, so I remember, Lance and I we'd find episodes, or he would record them and he would put them onto DVDs and we would share them. And, I'd be binge watching, 5 episodes of Icons just because I just loved the series. I always loved the history of gaming and the industry of gaming, and diving into what led to, something being created or something being imported and released over here. And just the fact that there was something on television that validated our hobby was a reason to try to emulate it a little bit online. And so that's how we started Retroware in general, was just the love of that kind of stuff. And then the video game years were sort of a natural progression of our group getting bigger and wanting to tackle topics that were tackle all the topics in a bite-sized sort of, for the attempt was to get an audience of people that were not necessarily just video game fans, so that we could give sort of a sort of a survey course, history 101 of video games, and then just throw it out there in bite-sized form. And it ended up being hour-long episodes anyway, but there were so many topics that it was cool.
Yeah, awesome. Well, to stay on the topic of the video game years, there's a lot of people, and not everybody on YouTube. What I'm about to say, I don't want it to sound like everybody on YouTube doesn't have talent, but there's a lot of people on YouTube. It's not a bad thing, but the way they get millions and millions of views is just I have a daughter, and she watches these videos of this lady who opens up surprise eggs. Okay, there's not really. I would, and she's actually one of the highest paid people on YouTube with the highest amount of views. And I'm sure she would say that's not really a talent. She's not she's not being funny or acting out with them. She's just opening up and saying, look what that is. There's a lot of people who are just playing video games on there, and they're getting millions of views.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. I'm only 26. I don't think I'm that old yet, but I have trouble, the video game years is so well done with graphics. It seems like, I know for a fact I've done, stuff like that myself. It takes a lot of work, a lot of talent to edit. It's an art to put that together. And the views aren't as high as some of those other shows. What do you think about that? And that's not putting your show down.
No.
It's maybe the everybody watches YouTube, but I think people who watch YouTube, really watch it are younger, and I don't understand how some of these things have more views than the video game years or other things, or even the Gaming Historian. Sometimes he makes things that are so nice, and I'm like, man, he needs. I wish I could help them get more views. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, there's probably a few things. I mean, yeah, we noticed that the views are not as high as we'd like. It definitely didn't. The video game years, while we're super proud of it, isn't something that recoups its cost. Let's say
Okay.
we definitely needed at least not in online advertising. We always had that struggle. Even a lot of people have been on Retroware that have blown up and become really big. Some have become, medium-sized big, or some have become at least well-known in the community. But yeah, we saw the online videos for video game stuff transition so many ways. I mean, when we first started, it was very little. You had a 10-minute limit at 240p on YouTube, so we would try to bite-size our stuff, even though we always wanted to go long. And that was kind of the way it was back then. It's transitioned a bit since, where people are more accustomed to watching full-length or long-form content streaming off of YouTube, either on their televisions or on their cell phones. So the format size has become a little bit more forgiving. But yeah, I mean, we always knew that we were hitting a niche, a very focused group. I mean, after a while, we realized, well, we're only going to blow up if we get big attention. And even if we got big attention through, a joystick or a Kotaku or written up in a gaming magazine that when they were still relevant, that was the only way we were going to get some big push. Or if we got some bigger names on the show who would then in turn blast it out to their social media following. In terms of it being just naturally, organically discovered on YouTube, I mean, some of that has to do with, the views that you have up to that point, what kind of clout you have, what kind of YouTube network you're a part of. It all varies. There's so many different reasons why something doesn't pop up on a search or it doesn't just show up on your feed when you log in. So, it's Let's Plays are the way to go. I mean, PewDiePie and just kind of quick, goofy content showing gameplay, modern stuff. I mean, when it comes to games, the modern stuff is huge. I mean, it's just the way it is. It makes sense. That's the young people. We had started doing an arrangement with The Escapist a while back, and it was funny because they had said to us, the video game years is great, but it's more like you're showing the games that my brother's into, not the games I'm into, or the games my younger or like those who are on YouTube all the time are used to. And I said, yeah, that's true. And that was one of the reasons we started early, was to get our feet wet and kind of get better at what we were doing, or at least understand how to do the production of it. Because, I mean, what started as me doing all the work quickly became impossible. So we needed to get other people involved. And that's ultimately one of the proudest things about this series, was that we got so many people in it. I mean, not just people on camera, but people editing, people doing graphics, people doing music, people doing everything. And it was such a massive collaboration. I mean, over 12 editors, multiple graphics guys, particularly Anthony Vasquez, who ended up doing the brunt of our 80s graphics, like the arcade and the special game segues and all that stuff. And it turned into a massive organization. And it was a ton of work. It was a lot of effort, a lot of producing. I mean, ultimately it became a lot of work from Pat and I just kind of wrangling and coming up with format ideas and basically approving final cuts and all of that. And it was just a way of organizing it all. And the money we had raised to do it, when we decided, well, you know what, we're going to put out DVDs. Excuse me. We were going to do an Indiegogo to get some funding for the 1980s years. I think we raised about $12,000, which for the next 10 episodes of full-length hour-long shows, we stretched it quite a bit. In fact, we spent a lot more than what we raised in order to get it done. And that's because, we had editors, and we couldn't just keep asking people to work for free.
Yeah.
and people were very willing to work for free on this because they believed in it, but it wasn't right, and we were going to be asking more of them. So it went into the production, it went into the graphics, and ultimately, even though other than the editors making a little bit here and there, I mean, us, the producers, never really made much. I mean, we made a little bit off DVD sales and continue to make a little bit off DVD sales to essentially recoup what our investment was. But it was always a labor of love that we wanted to do. So, oh well, no, not enough views, but it's all cool.
It's something to be proud of, and I definitely didn't mean it like that. I think it's deserving, and it's never too late, though. You know,
oh yeah,
it's always going to be on YouTube, you know, and I'm definitely going to push some people that way because I loved it. And
oh yeah, no, we're not. Trust me, I'm not offended by the. It's like not a lot of views. We know it's not a lot of views, and it's great because that's. I mean, to be honest, like we launched our last episode, 1989 Part 8, about a month ago, and the comments that we got in when we basically wrapped it and said this is the last one for the foreseeable future. The comments were just insanely positive, and it was so affirming and wonderful that people who do love the show are so they'll voice it so much, and they said it's a crime you don't have that many views, and we had heard that for a while, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. I mean, we just loved all the kind words and that people appreciated what we did, and hell, I mean, even if you add up all the video game years episodes and the views we got, I mean, hell, we're sometimes higher up than some deep cable shows. I mean,
y'all definitely didn't do bad. I mean, I think.
Oh yeah, for a niche show like that, yeah, that's all right.
yeah, it's y'all definitely did well. I'm just saying, I think y'all deserved, PewDiePie numbers.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you said comments. One of the things I commented, please bring me I Love the '90s, or not I Love the, you know what I mean? Because it's video game years '90s. Y'all, ever thinking that might happen, or?
Yeah, we've been talking about it a little bit lately. Right now, Lance and I are finalizing the production of the Volume 3 DVD, which will be 1983, 84, and 85, which should come out actually pretty soon. We're just kind of tweaking a few things and adding some bonus features and stuff, and getting ready to record some audio commentaries like we've done in other DVD sets. But I mean, Pat and I, what ended up in terms of continuing the arrangement of how to produce the show, Pat is now one of the co-owners. Pat the NES Punk, Pat Contry, is one of the co-owners of the show, co-director, co-producer. I mean, he and I were sort of we were the overall management of the production of the show, especially the last 7 years of episodes, 7 episodes or so, and so we're trying to decide what to do. I mean, a lot of it has to do with this takes an insane amount of effort, and Pat does this full time for a career, this kind of work, and he's got to maintain the the time value of how to do these kind of things, and so do I. I mean, I have a job outside of this and a family, so it's like, well, I can't spend all my free time on something that isn't turning some kind of profit, or at least paying for the effort that is being put into it. And especially if we're paying more than what we had to spend on making the show. So, we're considering another round of funding for the 90s. To be honest, we probably won't ultimately start that until, the summertime. Most likely, there's a lot of things we have on our plate. There's a lot of things RetroWare wants to do new, outside of video game years, since that's been essentially the focus for the last 4 years. And I wouldn't say that it's over. I mean, I think we will want to raise more money for it this time around, maybe for fewer episodes, but just to not only put out the show and fund what kind of production is necessary, but actually improve the show too, and perhaps get more guests, newer guests, different people that are industry focused from the 90s. It becomes a larger scope when it comes to the 90s, considering the industry turns enormous at that point, and there are still players that are working today in the industry that were there when the turn of that decade. So we would like to get more people involved, and there's production costs involving that. So yeah, I wouldn't say that it's over, awesome. But there's going to be a little bit of a hiatus.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. And I don't want to got one more question about the video game years. I don't want to go I don't want to spend all the time on that. Last question, quick question for the DVD. I want you to get this out there. What can people get on the DVD? You said they'll get extra stuff. Just real quick.
Yeah, sure. Well, in previous years, we did Volume 1, which was 77, 78, 79. We try to keep them to just 3 episodes. We put them out in the general sense of eras. So the 70s was the beginning. Excuse me. The Golden Age, 80, 81, 82. And then 83, 84, and 85 are going to be the set is called The Fall and Rise. So you're essentially watching everything leading up to the crash into the release of the Nintendo Entertainment System and the resurgence of the industry, at least in the United States, North America. Mm-hmm. So in that set, we're actually still finalizing bonus features, but I can say at this point there will definitely be more of an uncut interview segment of Howard Phillips, the former Nintendo Game Master, Howard and Phillips, Nintendo Power. We interviewed him amazingly all the way back in 2012, which we've continued to use the pieces that we filmed him with into the latest episodes. But there's a lot of stuff he talked about that, we pull out little bites here and there, but we wanted to put a more extended, uncut version of the conversation. We've always had outtakes. The last set we did outtakes purely of Eric Lappy from Let's Get, because he's friggin' hilarious. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone's kind of funny on the show, or it kind of got less funny and more, sort of standard information as the episodes went on. But Eric is always funny. He puts so much time and effort into essentially scripting, or almost completely scripting his contribution to the show. So he has these outtakes that are just really funny. If he screws up something he meant to say. And he's always been great at not only providing footage of each topic that we send, of the topic list we send out to contributors, but he also puts together a bloopers reel for every year that he provides. So we'll probably cut together a little short blooper reel of just Eric stuff like we did on our last DVD, because no matter how much of other people's stuff we cut in, it still ends up being funnier if it's just Eric stuff. So that's one thing. We always had commentaries. We're still determining what commentaries we'll have this time, but it's more than likely we'll have a commentary with Lance and I, one track, and then another track with Pat Contry, Ian Ferguson, and Joey DeSena, because those 3 are also producers on the show, and Pat, of course, like I said. So that'll probably be on there for bonus features. We're trying to see if we can fit in another uncut interview of Howard Scott Warshaw, because we interviewed him back in 2012 as well, and he had about an hour worth of interview and talking to. He was
what was his thing?
He was the guy. He created. No, he has the dubious honor of having created E.T.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. There's a documentary about his whole thing too on Netflix.
Oh yes, that's right. I saw that.
I like that. I was impressed that y'all got him too. Him and Howard Phillips. I was like, wow.
Yeah, Phillips. It was fun. We had a lot of interviews like Howard Phillips at the 2012 Classic Gaming Expo in Las Vegas. We set up a whole green screen studio up in our hotel room, and we found guys on the floor, and Howard was there that year. I think he was pushing a new app he was working on, so he was kind of making an appearance back into the video game world, and he was more than willing to give an interview for about half an hour. So we got him up in the room. We got a lot of guys that show up, kind of the guest stars on the show, came from that round of interviews we did that weekend. And then Howard Scott Warshaw, I have to thank Pat for reaching out to Destin Ligari, who was, the guy from Screw Attack, who went on, I think he's at IGN now, but he set up the interview with Howard Scott Warshaw because Pat, I think, met with him or convinced him during the Angry Video Game Nerd movie shoot to be a part of the show. So they got him in a room and they started interviewing him. And it was, of course, the interview was done before they discovered all the landfill stuff a couple years back. So it's funny. We actually have him talking about how he doesn't believe that the landfill story is true.
I noticed that.
It was pretty cool. So and in his insight into the industry back in the early 80s is, unparalleled. And he's really good at talking about it. And so there's a lot of stuff that we wanted to just lay out. I mean, we had over 45 minutes of edited uncut Howard Scott Warshaw interview that we wanted to put in our last DVD, but we couldn't fit in a 45-minute segment with all the other stuff we had, so we actually cut it down substantially. We might release it here and there, but hopefully we'll fit it into this set. Otherwise, it'll probably come out in another way.
Well, that's awesome. I'm definitely interested in that, and we'll be looking into getting all the DVDs because I love the show so much.
Yeah, we'll definitely release all of them on DVD at some point. After this set, there's 86, 87, and 88, which would make up the rise of 8-bit era, and then probably hold off on 89 till we do more episodes of the 90s and do 89, 90, 91 for the 16-bit rise, and that's essentially the overall plan right now.
Awesome. Well, I'm with Nintendo Nuggets, and it's a Nintendo website. We do Nintendo news, talk about Nintendo stuff. You did in the video game years. For now, y'all stopped at 89. Nintendo, only thing y'all really have about Nintendo home console wise is the NES.
Yep.
So I'm guessing you're an NES fan. I love my two favorite NES games are Super Mario Brothers and Tecmo Super Bowl. Now I know Super Mario Brothers 3 for the NES is a better Mario game, but I was not privileged enough in my younger days to be able to get that game, or my brother who actually was the one getting those games because I was too young at the time. But when I got older, I only played Super Mario Brothers, and so for a nostalgia factor, my favorite is Super Mario Brothers, and then Tecmo Super Bowl because even if you don't like sports, I think I went over that in the video game years. It's just a great game. So
Tecmo Bowl, the original. I mean, we played that to death, and it was amazing how many people. I mean, back when it came out, that I know were not video gamers like I was or some of my buddies were that just loved that game. I mean, it was. Yeah, crossed over.
Tecmo Bowl, Tecmo Super Bowl is the is my favorite with actually because Tecmo Bowl didn't have the actual teams, right? It was
they had teams. I just remember Tecmo Bowl. Like the big thing with Tecmo Bowl was if you played Bo Jackson, it was impossible to stop him. So there were teams. It was. They're always limited, but, a lot of generic stuff, but then a few players that were just impossissible to stop.
But, Tecmo Super Bowl had Bo Jackson, too, so I remember that, too. They're probably very, very similar. Anyway, so what's your one or two favorite NES games?
That's a tough question, yeah. I had a film teacher that used to say all the time, I have 100 films in my top 10 list alone. And but with Nintendo, I kind of saw the question coming, so I thought about it quickly. I would have to say my favorite NES games of all time are The Legend of Zelda, the original, and Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, which I know is somewhat more of a controversial choice, but it was always one that I loved. And when you're 8 years old, when the game comes out and you're completely friggin' confused about what's going on, it just added to the mystique and the depth of the game to me at that time. So those two pop out for me.
And back then it was different. If you got a game, you kind of had to like it no matter what. I mean,
I got no choice.
Yeah, that was the game you got. You finally got your parents to get it for you, or you find if it sucked, I know I always just found a way to. I was gonna like it, or I was gonna put time into it, even if I didn't like it.
Yeah, it's like you spent $50 on an NES game in 1989, and you're like, well, that's like $80 today, and that's a substantial amount of money for a video game. And you played it. That's what you played.
That's what you got, and you're gonna play it. One of the things I saw, I was kind of looking around on the internet to try to get some questions for you because I didn't want to just stick on the video game years. I saw that you had a flood a couple years ago.
Yes.
Little damage to Nintendo Power magazines I saw. How did that flood happen, and anything else other than the Nintendo Power? Because there's a video about the Nintendo Power, so and I know you said you had most of your video game stuff down there. So the reason I'll tell you a little bit of story here. I had found probably in 2005, I went to a garage sale in my neighborhood, and this girl was selling. I kind of felt bad about it, but her brother was off to college, and her mom were selling his Nintendo games, his NES games and his Sega Genesis games. And there was probably about 50 in there. Some of them, Gauntlet 2, still with the cellophane wrapped in it.
Wow.
Yeah, some really good stuff in there. But yeah, probably about 50 of them, and they sold it for like $10. And I remember even asking, like, "Are y'all sure? Is he going to be mad?" Like, know if I feel right about taking this for $10. I mean, and this was really before I think the whole collecting and people really got into it that I knew. I mean, I know there was always people doing it, but I don't think it was as big as now. It seems like people are really collecting NES games, but
The very fact that you said anything is nicer than most.
yeah,
I mean,
I was
everybody kind of knows what they have now, and somehow.
Yeah.
And yeah, back then it was kind of easier to find that kind of stuff. But hey, you gave them the out.
Yeah. I mean, I lived in the neighborhood too, so only a couple houses down. You know, I didn't want him coming back home, so I was like, let's be, you know, be clear. Y'all are sure. And so yeah, they sold it for $10. Well, my older brother, his friend, you know, saw him one day and was like, oh, can I bring some home so I could show my younger brothers and I could play with them? Well, you know, it's been about 10 years now, and I've never seen him again. And I've told my brother, you know, ask your friend. So I lost those. It's worse than a flood. I can't, you know, they're gone. I don't even have the evidence. So I lost all of those games, and all of our childhood games were with those games.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah.
So now I have gone. I mean, lately I had to go and buy the Mario games because they're my favorite for the Super Nintendo. I mean, there was Super Nintendo games in there too. I didn't buy those in the garage sale, but I'm just trying to not even collect. I'm trying to get my original childhood games, even if they weren't good. I'm trying to have my original collection of games, which wasn't that much. But anyway, so I just wanted to, you know, that's a story I'm telling. And yeah, so in your flood, did you lose anything else?
Yeah, I lost a couple things. It was like I said in that video. I remember that video. That was one of my favorite ones I did. It was Nintendo Power meant the most, and it's like you said, because like your childhood games mean the most. You know, my collection's grown quite a bit, and I look at it now. I mean, just to preface this, there are things that are valuable in my collection, and then there are things that I really care about. So, you know, if I look back at my copy of Dragon Warrior, which is a completely common game, that is one of my most prized possessions for the memories and the story behind that one. I actually talk about it in a video that I put up. Yeah, so
it's your grandfather.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks for watching. Yeah, it was. So that game, for example, is incredibly important to me. And my original NES, my original Atari 5200, you know, stuff from when I was a kid. But yeah, what did I lose? I'll be honest. Game-wise, I think everything survived in terms of I'm able to play the games. Awesome. But there were a lot of things that were in their original packages or boxed. That the boxes and manuals became crap. You know, they ended up either becoming waterlogged and unsalvageable, or becoming like manuals become waterlogged and then they dry into like a hardened mess where you just can't do anything with them.
Pages are stuck together.
Yeah.
How'd the flood happen? I don't think you ever said that in the.
Yeah. I was living in Norwalk, Connecticut. This was my last place. My wife and I, that was our first like apartment together, and it was a two-family house. So our next door neighbors, or our, you know, right across the wall neighbors, their washing machine feed came loose and shot water all over their basement, and they weren't around that weekend. So it ended up just filling our side of the basement as well, and that's where my game room was. And I was away that weekend with my family, or with just Sarah at the time, because we didn't have any kids yet. And I got a call from my landlord saying, hey, there was a flood. Some of your stuff got wet. We're picking it up. If you want to come by. I'm like, oh my God, I'm nowhere near where you are. I was like I was up in New Hampshire, 4.5 hours away. So I called up Lance, because Lance lives in Connecticut and lives nearby, and he did a solid for me, ran over there and spent a lot of time picking things up, lifting them up, and giving me a quick assessment of what the damage was. And the big thing I was worried about were the Nintendo Powers, because, you know, I since then I don't store things in cardboard boxes much anymore. If anything is near the ground, it's in plastic. But I was lucky that a lot of my early Nintendo Powers were sitting even though they were in a cardboard, like banker's box or something, they were up a couple feet on top of other things. But one of my cardboard boxes filled with Nintendo Powers, sort of like the early 90s years or mid 90s years, yeah, they got toasted. I was able to salvage some of them, and some of them I still have are around, just a little bit more wrinkly. Yeah. But Yeah, that was my biggest fear because I just heard that those are like little time capsules, you know. It takes you
Oh yeah.
back to pre-internet when you need to look at stuff about games and learn about what's coming out. There was no other way but those video game magazines, and that was yeah, those are little portals. So that was tough. It was funny that that was the first thing I worried about
Yeah.
more than the games, and yeah. But luckily, I didn't lose too much. Some stuff got trashed, but nothing that I could barely remember now. So there's
Yeah.
nothing that I
It
can't
could
live
have been
without.
worse. It could have been worse. Could have been a lot worse.
Oh yeah, no, I've known people that have lost lots in
Yeah.
floods and storms. Ugh.
Or their brother gives it away.
Yep, that too. Yeah, sorry. I'm glad. I'm glad. I mean, I've only lost a few things from letting somebody borrow them over the years,
Yeah.
and it still haunts me every once in a while. But, well,
It happens. It happens. Moving on. Are you still a Nintendo fan? Do you keep up with the current state? I love my Wii U. I know a lot of people don't like the Wii U. I love my Wii U.
Yep.
Do you still play?
I do. I play. I'll be honest. When it comes to playing stuff, I usually play 3DS or DS.
Nice.
It ends up being whenever I can grab time, which is usually when I'm falling asleep. Because I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, so I've been spending time, game-related time, introducing like my 4-year-old to the NES or to arcade games on my MAME cabinet, so little things like that, and he gets really into it, which is fun to watch. You know,
Yeah.
the day he saw a Mario Maker ad and he said, "I want that game," I was like, "All right, very cool." Still don't have it though, but I do have
Oh,
the
that's
Wii
great.
U. And Mario Maker looks absolutely amazing, and I just love what it does, not only to sort of the nostalgia factor, but introducing the complexities of level design and what the original creators were able to accomplish with the tools they had back then. And they give you something easy to work with, and it's still difficult to make something good. And it's that's so cool. I hope that's a format they use in other game titles. I'd love to see the Zelda Dungeon Maker game,
Oh,
or
that would be amazing.
yeah, that would be absolutely stunning to
Yeah.
see. So it'd be. I hope they keep going with that. Yeah, I'm a big Nintendo fanboy. I mean, Nintendo was definitely the turning point. I got my NES in like Christmas of 1987. I still use the same one today, and yeah, that was the thing that brought everybody together in the late 80s and early 90s. That's what the kids did. We
Yeah.
played Nintendo games. So that's a big one. I was lucky enough throughout the years, though, I mean, I would always ask for a video game system of some kind for Christmas. And even above the games, I love the consoles. I love the technology or the advancement of the technology. So, I mean, I had a Genesis, I had a TurboGrafx. I was lucky. And my parents spoiled me a bit. So I still have the stuff. So and I made a website out of it. So I feel like
Yeah.
I've given back a little. But I've even though I had every Sega system and loved it, and some of my favorite games of all time are on Sega systems, I still root for the Nintendo team quite a bit. It's funny that way.
Yeah.
I definitely do to this day. So I hope the NX is something amazing. I hope any new incarnation they do is great.
That's you touched on a couple questions that I actually was planning on getting you. So I'm gonna come back to the NX because I have a question for you. Not a question, like a prediction type thing. But you
Sure.
talked about your kids. I have a 2-year-old. Greatest thing in the world, having kids. Brought up Mario Maker. One of the things I'm doing with Mario Maker is I made a level where you don't have to jump. You just
Nice.
have to hold right. You know, the joystick
That's
to the right
great.
to
That's
try
smart.
yeah, that was my like first idea. I had, well, not first, but I loved that game, and that was the first game in a while that I waited for every day, and it like felt like years until it would come out. I wanted that game so bad. I'm such a Mario fan.
Yeah.
And so so I did that for her. She's 2, she still can't do it. So you said you have a 4-year-old. Is there any what game would you recommend? I think I had Justin Masson from Nintendo Dads podcast, and I asked him the same question because they have a podcast about being a dad and video games. And so what you said you did? What's it could be Atari, arcade, Nintendo.
Well, I'll think of that's a good question. I'm actually curious to hear what they had to say too, because your idea sounds amazing, and I can't believe. I mean, it hasn't come up when I've talked to other people. That's actually brilliant, because
Thank you.
the first game I mean, video game. My kid, my 4-year-old, he was messing with an iPhone at 18 months. Like frighteningly so,
Yeah.
like to the point where he was grabbing our iPhone or an iPad, and he's not only knowing how to swipe away background running apps, but he knows how to open folders to find the games he wants. I mean, this was 18 months old. That's insane.
Same
The
here.
the intuitiveness of that is impossible to try to unprogram to some degree when you hand a controller or a joystick to him. So I introduced him to the arcade cabinet first. My wife, for my 30th birthday, got me a Sega New Astro City Candy Cab, which Lance and I, maimed out. And I was thinking, well, arcade games, that's how I started. That's my first memories are playing like Centipede with the trackball, and that's pretty intuitive. So what can I get? Where can I start out with them? You can only get so complex. The jumping mechanic is a difficult thing to time and get right with a little kid. So amazingly, I started with Ninja Turtles, which is weird.
Great game.
And the reason was I could play with him, 2-player co-op.
Yeah.
If it's the arcade version, you just pump in the fake quarters, and just keep going. And he ended up, we ended up beating it together, and that got him super excited. Other than that, I introduced him to Super Mario Brothers, because I thought, well, if you're gonna learn about platforming, you might as well start with like the quintessential platforming game,
Definitely.
or one of the first, if not the first modern platforming game. And
the first one who did it right.
Exactly. And he did he would start running and then falling into the pit, or he would run and figure out jumping but not get the timing right. I mean, probably he wouldn't play it nonstop, but every once in a while I'd put it on. He ended up finishing the first level, and he was super excited. He got to the flagpole, and that's pretty cool. I mean, he first played it on the Wii U Virtual Console.
Mm-hmm.
And I think him, maneuvering the giant controller was a little frustrating for him.
Yeah.
So then I just put it on the NES for him, and he was sitting there.
Do it.
Yeah, and I gave him like the dog bone controller, so it was a little bit more ergonomically satisfying for his little 4-year-old fingers, and he was able to, mess around with it quite a bit. Other than that, other games that I've let him just go at to see how he does. Final Fight, amazingly, for the arcade, he got like to level 4. And he was he was just beating bad guys. I mean, it's easy when I throw in a bunch of like credits, and you can just keep going.
Yeah.
But he got his feet wet with that. I tried Pac-Man with him. He got bored real fast, which is funny. And I'm trying to think. I think there was something else that he was really into, but it's funny because the attention span goes so fast. I've had a couple conversations with him saying, he's like, I want to play another game. And I said, you have to understand, when I was 8, this is the game you got. And you played this, you got good at it, or you didn't get good at it, and then you waited. He's like, he wants to download every new app. He wants to play a Bugs Bunny runner game. He wants to play everything. Lance and I and a couple other guys put on a video game expo this past year here in Connecticut. And we were setting up the arcade games in the arcade free play room, and one of the games was Zero Gunner. And I was doing a walkthrough with my partners, with the management of the Oakdale Theater where we put on the expo. And I brought my kid with me. I brought Cameron, my 4-year-old, and we went. I left them in the arcade. The games were running, and I said, I'll be right out here. Come out here if you want to see me. We're just walking around. And he got up to the Zero Gunner game, which is the helicopter shooter game. The sequel's really good on Dreamcast. But this was the arcade cabinet. And it was pumped full of credits. And I come back to go find him. He's still playing it, but he's about to step off because he beat the game.
What?
And I'm like, oh my God, man, how did you do this? And I mean, it's a shooter. You can die a million times and start back where you left off. So he ended up getting to the end of the game. He's like, I'm done. I'm like, wow. That's impressive. I was like, that's really funny to see. So, I mean, let me just say, I definitely push him to do more. I mean, he also plays soccer.
Oh, yeah,
He does physical things, but when it comes to like winter in New England, if throwing him into a video game every once in a while, it's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
that's awesome. All right, let's go back to NX. Do you have any NX prediction?
I haven't given it a ton of thought. I mean, I've read a couple things here and there. I mean, I'm guessing it's going to have a crossover compatibility with mobile and with any either the new 3DS or any existing or any forthcoming handheld, where it's going to be sort of a hybrid. Mobile gaming is huge. Console gaming is far from dead, but mobile gaming is huge. I think they'll want to leverage that as much as they can and try to get into the mobile market more than they have at this point to support it in order to, new revenue streams for the company. I mean, I was hoping before Wii U came out that they would just call it the new Nintendo Entertainment System, really bank on some old nostalgia while, pushing what made them so good to begin with, games like Mario Maker, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I really don't know. I'll be honest. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Man, I think those rumors about it being a hybrid, I think when it comes to video game rumors, what I've noticed, whenever it becomes like a unanimous rumor like that, it usually becomes true. So now I'm starting to think that rumor that everybody is saying, that it's like a handheld and a home, and I just hope they don't name it something like the biggest problem with the Wii U was the damn name.
They kept the Wii name, which was stupid.
It confused me. I'm a Nintendo nerd, and I was like grandmas and moms thinking like, what is it? Is it a add-on to my Wii?
Yep.
Everybody says that, but that's what it when it first came out or was coming out. They did a terrible job with that. Whoever. Because it's a great system. It's amazing. I honestly think if the name was different and it got if it was advertised better, it would have done well. And
it was inherently linked in everybody's mind to the last one, which automatically made it sort of old in people's mind, or not as good, or not as different.
And people were tired with motion controls. That's how the Wii kind of won the console war with the motion controls, but at the end there, people were tired of it. Nobody wanted that anymore. I was tired of it, so it's just made it seem like it was a Wii 2.0, and it's really not. It's really, I mean, it's a great the hardware's not as good, but I don't really need graphics. I still like 8-bit games. So I mean,
I think it's sort of reached an interesting point. As a kid, you always wonder how good are the games going to get later. How are the graphics going to be better?
Yeah.
How can they get much better? I mean, I say that now, and who the hell knows? But
to be fair,
really,
I said that at looking at like a Nintendo 64. It can't get better than this. There's no way.
I mean, when I see stuff on PS4, I'm like, oh my god. I mean, to what level of realism do you need in order to enjoy playing a game, which is sort of an escapist thing anyway? So that's why I love the fact that indie games that try to tell stories in a new way or try to emote things differently or in new ways still utilize like the visual vocabulary of even 16-bit or even 8-bit. I mean, they take these tools and visual cues that come from the past because they still are very, very powerful to be able to tell video games in this kind of medium or tell these kind of narrative stories or anything. And it's I love that. I mean, I'm hoping that doesn't go away. I'm hoping that some of the greatest gameplay experiences to come out are not some sort of massively multiplayer first-person shooter kind of game, but more like Undertale or more like I don't even know. Trying to think of games.
Yeah, I am too. But I know exactly what you're talking about, and I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, I play a lot of when it comes to playing stuff. I play a lot of 16-bit. I mean, that's an era that's aged incredibly well when you look back on it. I mean, just gorgeous. I mean, N64 I think has not aged as well, but there is the biggest retro gamers out there now. That was their era. And I'm kind of amazed at how much N64 is just loved. I mean,
I know. I think a Super Nintendo looks way better. Looking back now,
I personally do too. But I mean, the N64 collectors are really big now. And I mean, one of my buddies, his name's Chris Crone. He runs a bunch of stores up here called Retro Games Plus. He's one of the guys that did the expo with us. And since he's opened his first store, I mean, the market has exploded in so many different areas, and the Genesis game prices are going up, but then the N64 game prices are going through the roof when they used to be ignored.
Yeah, I've seen
funny.
them too. They're pretty high up there. Yeah, I know. I went to GameStop the other day. I lost my the plug cord for my Nintendo 64, the whatever it's called.
The adapter plugs in
Yeah,
the back. Yeah.
yeah, plug into the wall. And so I lost my cord. I went to GameStop and I was like, there was like a young girl, and I was like, hey, because they've started to sell old systems at GameStop around here, like online, and we have another place that sells like older stuff, but I was already at GameStop, so I asked her because I know they sell the regular Nintendo, I call it regular NES games and Super NES games online and stuff. So I asked her, and she was so amazed that I had a Nintendo 64. She was like, "You have one? How'd you get that?" And that's what do you? How long? I was like, I mean, I've had one since I got it the day it came out, almost.
Yeah.
You know, like what do you? But I was amazed that she felt that way because I remember when just a few years ago it was not.
Yeah, $10.
Yeah.
It's easy to find.
Yeah, I was like, what happened? I was thinking to myself, like, like, whenever she said that, I was like in shock, like, yeah, like, what do you care?
Oh, it's incredible, the games.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember at a pawn shop up in New Hampshire, I bought boxed copies of Panic Restaurant for the NES and DuckTales 2. I mean, not just boxed, I mean complete with like every manual.
Ooh.
And for $10 each.
Wow.
And this was like 3 years ago. It wasn't that much. I mean, granted, it was worth something then, but it exploded. I ended up selling the DuckTales 2 because, I mean, even though it's sacrilegious to do so, I'm like, Jesus, I'm going to make, 40,000% profit on this. It's got to go for it.
Yeah, like Little Samson.
It's out of control.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
out of control. So, I mean, I assume the market will crash at some point, but who knows?
Yeah. I mean, it's bound to. I wish I could go on a time machine and go find a Little Samson because, I mean, just a couple years ago, you could have probably found that in like a 10-cent bin.
Yep.
But I will never understand it. It's a great game. I mean, I understand why people like it. I just don't get what happened. It's almost like YouTube had a little bit to do with it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think some of my buddies had something to do with it.
Yeah, I do.
It's like, look what you did.
Hey, it's your fault.
Yeah, it's so funny. And they, I mean, yeah, Game Chaser's doing Little Samson stuff. I'm like, God, that game was not worth anything when you first did. Well, it was worth something, but it wasn't that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There've been a few high-profile sales. The main press picks up on a woman who finds a sealed stadium events and it sells for $50,000, or Nintendo World Championships cart. Yeah. Little things eke out into the mainstream, and that makes people go into their basements and see what they have, and then things get thrown out into the marketplace, and then it just ends up being collectors dealing with collectors, and it's funny. I mean, I've seen baseball card stores turn into video game stores.
Yeah.
As these guys deal in collectibles, and this has become the big one, the one that has the most resale value down the line. So yeah, who knows? I mean, people want to play those. I mean, there's something about finding that cartridge, that original cartridge. I mean, you can emulate the hell out of stuff, but getting the cartridge, putting it in the original system, that's the experiential part that people want to have. And
yeah.
I get it. So even if the casual gamer wants to have an original NES, those things are going to get bought up.
Yeah. I know. It doesn't make sense, but I buy all the games I already have on my Wii U, the Virtual Console, because they're cheap and I want to play them, and I'll play them on there. But like I have Super Mario World on there, but I have Super Mario World on my Super Nintendo. But every time I start to play it on my Wii U, I'm like, I want to play it on the. It's the exact same thing, but I'm like, I want to play it on the actual Super Nintendo.
Yep.
It just feels right.
I get big into the like the guys on our channel, Corey and Triforce. They do My Life in Gaming, and they've been doing a very in-depth series of RGB videos, which show how to pull the greatest image you can possibly pull out of your retro consoles, which is generally, getting the RGB signal out of it and then putting it through an RGB monitor or converting it to high def. And I love that stuff. I've gotten so into the minutia of it where, okay, I have this old video game system. I can plug it into this TV. If it's a flat screen, it's going to look like garbage. If I plug it into an old tube, it looks pretty good. But how do I make it look really good? I have RGB cables now. It's like I try to make the old systems look as perfect as they possibly can, and people keep innovating on it, and it's a testament to people wanting to replicate that experience, and it's just so cool.
Yeah, quick question here. Totally no segue for it. Who makes the T-shirts for RetroWare TV? Because there's the coolest T-shirt I saw the other day watching some of your videos. It looks like an NWO from wrestling. It looks like for people who don't know, New World Order was with WCW, and WWE had New World Order too. But yeah, it says RWTV, and it looks like how the NWO shirt. Who came up with that?
That was Jesus. You know what? It was one of three people. It was either Billy or Jay from Game Chasers, or it was Pat. And excuse me. I mean, I liked wrestling. I wasn't a giant wrestling fan, but these guys really liked wrestling, and they did this, and then it kind of took on a life of its own. This was probably 2011, 2012. This was sort of like the era 2 of retroware, where we got these guys together. YouTube stuff was exploding. We were going to a whole bunch of conventions, and Billy, Jay, and Pat were doing their Wolfpack promos, as they called them, and they were shooting these black and white promos where they were like, "Oh, you're going to be with RetroWare TV, and RWTV," and they just did these high impact promos just for the hell of it, and a lot of it coincided with the launch of our older version of the mobile app, and us working with Screenwave Media, which is the YouTube network we're a part of. And yeah, we ended up they gave us the design, and they said, "Here, take the design." And they're like, "Yeah." So we printed up we got a bunch of shirts printed up. We've had a couple different places do them over the years, but yeah, I think we're down to our last couple. We haven't reprinted them. That was like the Wolfpack era.
Yeah.
So I don't know, we might reprint them. Those things were pretty popular. A lot of people still want them.
Yeah, I noticed it. I was like, that's a really cool T-shirt. I want it.
I'll be honest, I had no idea what the hell it was when I first saw it, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, NWO. Okay, I remember. That's funny. That's good."
Well,
and then promos went well.
When I did my interview with Nintendo Dads, he's from Calgary, and there's a famous wrestler up there. So anyway, we got to talking about wrestling. Well, then I interviewed my best friend who is a professional wrestler. And so we talked about wrestling video games. So I was like, well, let me see if I can keep it going. And I watched the episode where y'all went over the WWF video game for the NES, and you didn't say one word about it. So I was like,
"Yep, that's me."
I'm not going to ask him any questions on that because I bet you he doesn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen much wrestling since like 1991, to tell you the truth. But it was funny. I actually applied for a job at WWE not too long ago too.
Really?
Yeah. But it's kind of, I mean, WWF, WWE, I mean, they're based here in Connecticut.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of people that work in there and that I've known or have done stuff. But it's, I mean, I remember it as a kid, and I mean, I've binge watched like all the early WrestleManias when I was a kid. So I just know the old school stuff, and not even that well.
Me too. I mean, I'm like almost a historian when it comes to the old school stuff. I watch sporadically, but definitely the old stuff's better. Almost kind of like video games. The old stuff's always better. Well, final question. We've been kind of going. I just wanted, y'all had an expo in October.
Yes.
How did that go? What was that about? I saw a little bit about that. Just recently. So
it was called Retro World Expo. It took place in Wallingford, Connecticut, at the Toyota Oakdale Theater. It was an idea that, I mean, we had always, like Lance and I had always thought about doing an expo. It's like, hey, maybe there's the Retroware Expo we should do at some point. Who knows? I mean, these things are starting to pop up. They keep getting more popular. And it really took our buddy Chris, who runs those retro game stores, to really push the idea. And he's like, let's do an expo. I mean, I'm opening more stores. There's tons of people that are coming to our monthly, Friday night game events at the store. I mean, we get like 200 people. The place is ripe for something like this. And I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And we talked about it for a while. Probably 2 years prior to us actually, pulling the trigger and doing it, we had visited a couple venues. And then it ultimately came down to, let's do this thing. And so we each threw in a little bit of an investment. There are 5 partners in total. And we chose the Oakdale Theater. It made a lot of sense, location-wise, from essentially being like equidistant from New York City and Boston. There's nothing like this in Connecticut. I mean, basically, you got to go to too many games down in Pennsylvania or a couple other locations that have popped up, but nothing purely, geared towards classic gaming. And I mean, between Lance and I, we had a ton of arcade games and consoles. I mean, most of my consoles took up the free play console area, which was nerve-wracking, but it was still.
Oh, God.
I was like, well, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so we ended up selling. We were doing pre-sale tickets. We got a bunch of vendors interested, which was kind of shocking as how many vendors. I mean, people wanted to do something like this. Vendors, resellers, private collectors, people that, they would hit up online sales, or they would do flea markets and things like that. Now they got an opportunity to go to a show, and we had like over 70 vendors, which was not bad for a first show at all. And then, we sold a little under 1,000 tickets pre-sale, and we're like, okay, well we'll break even. And then and we had a few bands that we knew of or that were interested, and we had the console area, and we had some panels set up from our buddies, from Retroware and other places, and then the day came, and we had over 2,000 people show up. The thing was a huge success, and it was so well received, and things went very smoothly, like shockingly smoothly. I mean, we were very organized, and we were very, we worked hard at it, but it came off pretty slick, and so we're definitely doing it again. And it's definitely tailored off of our experiences we've had at other expos, panels, bands, free play stuff, lots of vendors, basically a whole event. I mean, we did it for one day last year. This year we're going to do it for 2 days, and we're nailing down the exact place we're going to do it. It's probably going to change this year because we're going to need accommodations this time, but we don't want to take away from the location that we're in. And yeah, I mean, news on that's actually coming out very soon. And pre-sale
awesome.
for Retro World Expo 2016 it'll go to retroworldexpo.com. Sooner or later, the info will be out, or follow us on Twitter.
There you go. That's awesome. That's great to hear. If I didn't live so far away in the deep south, I would I definitely went to that. That's really cool. Well,
thanks.
I appreciate you doing this. I really do. Thank you so much. And before we go, do you want to tell everybody your Twitter? It's retrowaretv.com.
Yep, retrowaretv.com. Twitter is at retrowaretv. We're on everything. I mean, you go on. I mean, some stuff is more up to date than others, but we're on Instagram as Retroware. We're on Facebook. I just started an account with VK, which is the Eastern European social network. I'm not kidding. It's weird, but I did it anyway. Nice. So we throw our name out there everywhere. But yeah, you actually caught me on an interesting day, because we just today on the website we launched, and I'm going to do a video after this. I got to go record something, but we just launched a whole bunch of new writers on the site. So our first article from one of our new 7 different columns that we have started today. A guy talks about Castlevania 2, the novel, which came out back in the day. So yeah, there's a bunch of new articles up on the site. I'm going to do a video about how we now have a brand new iOS, iPhone, iPad app, which is completely free, and it's a super cool way to read articles in particular. The videos come through very well, podcasts as well. So, we're trying to keep the site moving a lot, going strong, and trying to do new things, and trying to do things past just the video game years. So, yeah.
Awesome. So everybody check that out, retrowaretv.com. Just Google Retroware TV, and you'll probably get all their social media stuff if you can't find it. While you're at it, check out NintendoNuggets.com. That's where I'm at for Nintendo news. And, yeah, thanks again, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.